Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah.
Alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina astafa. Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal wa na'udhu billahi min hali ahli an-nar. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد كلما ذكره الذاكرون وصل على سيدنا محمد كلما غفل عن ذكره الغافلون. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح. اللهم اجعلنا دعاة إليك وإلى رسولك. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما. أما بعد، رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. يا Allah. The Sheikh Ibn Wata'ila al-Iskandari Rahimahullah says, there is a great difference between those who deduce the divine existence from Allah as proof for the existence of things and those who produce the existence of things as proof for the existence of the divine being. It's a big difference. There are those who look at the created things, the created objects, and from that they derive the existence of Allah. They use the seen and the creation to get to the unseen. And there are those who see the existing things, they see these things because of the existence of Allah. So therefore, from Allah's existence, they derive that these things are happening in the world and these things are created in the world. It's a big difference between the two. He who deducts the existence of things around us, he deducts the existence of things from the existence of Haqq to Allah. Because He exists, everything else exists. He has confirmed absolute existence. He has confirmed absolute existence. That is wujub wajib. That being whose existence is wajib. Namely, the existence of Allah Ta'ala. He then substantiated the existence of temporal things on the earth on the basis of the absolute existence of Allah, the original and true existence of Allah. That because Allah exists, these things exist. On the other side of the coin, he who deducts and derives the existence of Allah on the basis of the existence of temporal things does so on account of him being deprived of divine proximity and qurb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I see a tree growing. This tree could not have grown from the growth of this tree, from the seed that is planted, and then the tree grows and it brings fruit. Wow, this gives indication upon the existence of a supreme being. That's the other side of the coin. But there's a big difference between the two deductions. When He, Allah Ta'ala, is never absent, when He is never absent, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in shaheed. When He is never absent, what need is there to deduce His existence? Commentary of this, because this is so deep, it has to be explained. This discusses a condition of the majzubin and the salikin, which we spoke about last week, that there are two classes of the awliya and those who are near to Allah, called the majzubin and the salikin. Since the divine Dhat, essence and presence of Allah, since that is initially manifested to the majzubin, the rest of creation, divine names and attributes are hidden from their gaze of insight, their basirat. Speaking about the majzub here. Since the divine Dhat is initially manifested, it's like they see the light already down the road. The rest of creation, the divine names, the asma, the divine attributes like rahmat and maghfirat and ra'fat are hidden from their gaze of insight, the basirat. So the majzub, they start from on top, and after their nuzul, after their descent into the lower strata of the attributes of Allah, of His mercy, His love, His kindness, His wrath, they go from that to there, and then names, and then finally they come to the creation. They enter into the mushahada of created objects, the majzub. They enter into the mushahada of created objects. They begin to see created objects around them. Now when they emerge from their state of jazb, they confirm the existence of the created objects. How are they confirming? They confirm the existence of created objects on the basis of the existence of Allah. Subhanallah. In view of their gaze being on Allah from the very beginning, as I said last week, these are people who have seen a light, which is like a beacon, and they are on the road, and they are focused on the light, so they are oblivious to everything else, and they are going there. Their gaze being on Allah Ta'ala from the very beginning. They prove the existence of creation from the fact of His existence. So that's the difference, because we said, remember, where the majzub ends is where the salik begins. We said that last week, remember? But there's a difference. Now let's talk about the salik. The salik is like me and you. The salik is one who is journeying. He's on a spiritual journey. He's climbing the ladder. He's going and journeying. The process of deduction of the salikin is the exact opposite. Initially, the preoccupation of the salikin is with creation. So the salik is initially occupied with creation. He observes the mountains, the seas, the rivers, the trees, the birds, the bees. From their contemplative study through muraqabah and meditation, from their contemplative study of created objects, by their muraqabah and meditation on these created objects, they ultimately reach the conclusion of divine existence. That is the other side. So, there is a great difference between these two methods of contemplative deduction. Whoever substantiates the existence of creation on the basis of divine existence, he confirms existence for the being who is deserving of it, because true existence belongs only to him. All other things are in reality non-existent. Their existence is only figurative, majazi, not hakiki. And this is the meaning of the term wahdatul wujud, oneness of presence. That is the meaning of the term wahdatul wujud. Because the existence of everything is figurative, majaz, just possible. These things are only here because of the existence of Allah. It's only Allah whose being and existence is fard and wajib and essential. On the other hand, whoever substantiates the existence of Allah Ta'ala on the basis of the existence of temporal things, he does so because he is far from the divine court and is deprived. And that is how the Salik starts. That's how he starts. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard waqtilafil layli wan nahar la ayatin li ulil albab الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. He is preoccupied with created objects and has not yet attained divine proximity. So this is the difference between the Majdhub and the Salik. He's starting. So his starting is the end of the Majzub. Alright? And the beginning of the Majzub is the end of the Salik, but with a difference. So the beginning of the Majzub, what he starts with, Subhanallah, it is the end of the Salik. Where the Majzub, the beginning of the Majzub is the end of the Salik, and the end of the Majzub is the what? How am I saying it? The beginning of the Majzub, where he begins, is really the end of the Salik, and where the Majzub ends is where the Salik begins, but with a difference. So he is preoccupied with created objects and has not yet attained divine proximity. In reality, creation is non-existent, its existence being only figurative. He thus makes deductions from non-existent things to substantiate his divine existence of Allah. He substantiates the conspicuous, which is Allah, on the basis of the inconspicuous, which is the creation. He resorts to this process of logic because he is far from the true existence and the truly conspicuous, because he is now beginning his journey. If such a person is not described as being far and deprived, it will lead to the conclusion that Allah Ta'ala is absent, when in reality he is never absent. Hence, there is no need for such deduction. He is not far away, needing external impressions to deliver us to him. In fact, Allah is closer to us than our own lives. He is more conspicuous than the external facades of all things. Thus, this kind of reasoning and istidlal is in itself proof of the distance and deprivation of this person, and that's why he's now starting. It should be noted that istidlal, reasoning, logical deduction, in this context does not refer to rational, aqli reasoning, or the system of logic employed in academic studies. What we're speaking about here, istidlal, is what? It refers to inspirational, which is wijdani, and dispositional, which is dhawki logic, wijdani logic, dhawki logic, which is the product of contemplation and meditation on creation to arrive at transcendental truths. The Sheikh then says, the gracious ayah, but it doesn't mean that we can't do tabligh, Harun. Now, doing tabligh means giving to people a message, conveying to them, doing certain things. Listen to this very carefully. The gracious ayat karima of Allah, that Allah says, the people of means should spend from their means. Alal musiri qadaruhu wa alal muqtari qadaruhu. As the ayat of Quran, but the mashayikh, look how deep they go into the ayat. Sometimes when we just are hooked up in the translation of it, look how these mashayikh go deep into the ayat of Quran. Allah says, Alal musi'i qadaruhu wa alal muqtari qadaruhu. The people of means and affluence should spend from their means. Refers to the state of those who have attained divine proximity. And the gracious ayat, those whose means are little, wa alal muqtari qadaruhu, those whose means are little should spend from whatever Allah Ta'ala has given them. So both of them should spend, but according to their means. It refers to those who are in the process of journeying towards Him. So the one on top was those who are in the state, refers to the state of those who have attained closeness to Allah, divine proximity. Spend of that liberally. And the other one, those who are not so good in means, he spend in his capacity, refers to those who are in the process, the salikin, of journeying towards Him, now started. They have not yet attained proximity. So the ayat, Alal musi'i qadaruhu wa alal muqtari qadaruhu. Let's talk about this ayat of Quran. This Quranic ayat, really, it pertains to divorced women. You have a wife, you have divorced her, she is divorced. So this Quranic ayat pertains to divorced women who breastfeed their babies after the divorce. They breastfeed their babies after divorce. And they have to be paid a wage because maintenance of the infant is the father's responsibility. So divorce finished, but they are breastfeeding. So the father has to maintain the child. He has to pay the woman a wage. Allah. If the father is a man of means and affluence, he should pay the child's mother generously. Pay her generously. And if he lacks substantial means, he should give whatever he can afford. This is the original meaning of the ayat. The Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi generalizes this Quranic verse. He uses it alal itlaq, in a general way, in substantiation of his view, to support his view. Look at the deeper meaning of it. Although the circumstances which had occasioned the revelation of this ayat and verse was specific, the text is general, because the Quran is not just for one era or for one specific sabab or reason. Quran is general until Qiyamah. The text is general, hence the validity of generalizing or itlaq. Or it could be said the verse is used as the basis for substantiating a view by way of analogical reasoning known as qiyas. So this verse is a basis for analogy. Yes, we accept that, but we could do analogy. And we could do qiyas from that onto this, or it could be used alal itlaq. In the Sheikh's analogy and qiyas, the first part of this ayat Let's go from the divorced woman now and go deeper. The first part of this ayat refers to the state of those salikin, those people who are journeying on the path to Allah, traveling, they want to get the love of Allah, they want to reach Allah, they want to become close to Allah, they want to understand and gain the marifat of Allah. It refers to the state of those salikin who have already acquired the treasure of wusul. They have wusul. Wusul means arrival. They have arrived at that station. It refers to them who have arrived at, who have attained the treasure of wusul, arrival, attainment of divine proximity, and they have acquired the treasure of mushahada. Mushahada. Mushahada is divine perception. Divine perception, where it is such a vast realm that a person travels in that realm of mushahada, of haqq, where it is also known as marifa and recognition of Allah. It refers to them. So their hearts, these who have reached the stage of wusul, they have arrived. They have reached the maqam of mushahada, of witnessing Allah's qudrat and power in everything. And that stage of mushahada is a realm and a world which is vast. So these people, the first part of the ayat refers to them. Alal musi qadaruhu. It means their hearts have been emancipated from the vision of all things besides Allah. Their heart is freed from that, from all things besides Allah, from Ghairullah, freed from that. They have arrived, wusul, they have arrived in the spacious field of Tawheed. And it's so spacious, that field is so spacious. And their gaze now is limitless, because when reaching this world, it is a vast realm. In this world, in this station, and in this maqam, divine knowledge and mysteries have unraveled for them. So it's a vast, vast realm. So they have thus acquired a substantial treasure, which they should now start sharing by imparting it to others liberally. Alal musi qadaruhu. They should spend as much as they desire. This treasure which they possess will not decrease, because the door of limitless knowledge has now opened up for them. Wow. One knowledge is when we read books and we get certain knowledge. But when Allah opens up the doors of knowledge to you, and the doors of the secrets and the mysteries of the heavens and the earth, wow. That is like the knowledge of whom? Khadir alayhi salam in Surah Kaf, when Musa journeyed to Khadir alayhi salatu wassalam, which is called ilmun wahbiyun. So there was the second part of the ayat now, Harun. That's why I tell you to stay, because if you understand this, and the brothers of Tabligh understand this, the second part of this gracious ayah applies to those who are yet engaged. It applies to those who are yet engaged in the journey of suluk. They're still journeying, still traveling, and they have not yet reached the station which is called maqam. They have not yet reached the maqam of mushahada, but they're still journeying. Their hearts have not yet been freed from beings other than Allah. Still, there are aliens in their hearts, and their hearts are not freed from Ghairullah, from beings other than Allah. Hence, you know what? They are still confined. They are still confined in the narrow limits of suspicion and baseless ideas. But yet still, they should share with others whatever knowledge they have acquired from Allah. They should still share it. Still share it according to their ability, and they should aid them. Ballighu anni walau ayah. However, they are not free to spend as they please. Why? Because their capital is very little. Alal muqtari qadaruhu. They are yet in a very restrictive circle. Subhanallah, it gets even more interesting. It gets even more interesting. Wow. Could you open this? Those who journey towards Allah Ta'ala. Some people journey towards the earth and towards the glitter and the glamour of the earth. And there are those who journey towards Allah. Those who journey towards Allah Ta'ala are guided along by the anwar, the nur of their mujahada, their effort, their spiritual struggle, opposition to the nafs, striving. They are guided by the nur of that. They are guided by the nur of their concentration, their tawajjuh, the anwar of their mujahada, and guided by their concentration, their tawajjuh. Those who journey towards Allah are guided along by the anwar, the nur of their mujahada and striving, and the nur of their tawajjuh, concentration and focus. And for those who have reached Allah, wusul, for them are the anwar, the nur of the divine That, the divine face and the divine presence. Thus, for the former, the effort is for the anwar, and for the latter are the anwar, the nur, without effort, because these belong exclusively to Allah Ta'ala. Therefore say, Qulillah وَذَرْهُمْ فِي قَوْضِهِمْ يَلَعْبُونَ. Look at this meaning of this ayat. Say only Allah and leave the people to play in their falsehood. قُلِ اللَّهِ وَذَرْهُمْ فِي قَوْضِهِمْ يَلَعْبُونَ. Explaining this. This statement illustrates the difference in the states of the salikin and the wasilin. We have the salikin, those who are journeying, and we have the wasilin, those who have reached and arrived. The wasilin are those who have already attained Allah's proximity. Those servants of Allah engaging in suluk and in journey, and who have not yet reached the station of mushahada and tajalli, they are guided along to Allah by the nur, the anwar of their mujahada. Their mujahada and the effort they make on their nafs produces a nur, and they are guided by that nur towards Allah. They are guided by the nur of their ibadat, and they are guided by the nur of their zikr. Their concentration is on the anwar and the nur, because the attainment of their goal is by virtue of these anwar and nur. Those who have already reached the lofty divine court, for them there are the anwar of Allah's vision and presence, because they have reached. Thus their anwar and their nur are divine emanation, which is on account of the relationship of nearness and love of Allah they enjoy. So whereas the first group, the salikin's efforts, their efforts, the efforts of the salikin, the strugglers, the journeyers, their efforts are for the achievement of this nur. Illumination cascades on the second group, which is the wasilin, without their effort. Anwar are not their goal, whereas the goal of the salikin is the nur, that nur of Allah. Allah Ta'ala has rendered them independent of anwar. Their state is reflected in the Quranic verse, قُلِ اللَّهِ فَذَرْهُمْ فِي قَوْضِهِمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. For them there is only Allah. Both the salikin and the wasilin have been prevented, both of them, those who are journeying, the salikin, and those who have reached. They have been prevented from considering their deeds. They don't ever look at their deeds. They have been blocked from considering their deeds and from the perception of their states. That is, like Sheikh Ibn Qayyim, alayhi rahmah, says, when Allah wants goodness for a person, then he blocks that person from seeing his good deeds and seeing his states, and he occupies him in viewing and focusing on his own faults. So they are blocked, the Salikin Anwa. They are blocked from considering their deeds and from the perception of their states. The Salikin have been prevented. Why? Because they do not see themselves honest with Allah Ta'ala regarding their deeds and states. And the Wasilin, those who have arrived, have also been prevented because being lost in divine absorption, they are detached from their deeds, from their amal and their states, their ahwal. Explaining this further, the difference between the Salikin, the journeyers, and the Wasilin, the arrivers, is discussed here from another angle. Allah Ta'ala has diverted the gaze of both groups, diverted their gaze from their actions, their amal-e zahira, outward actions, and even from their ahwal-e batina, spiritual states. He has taken their gaze away from that. The reason for this, the diversion, differs for the two groups. Because whenever the Salik's attention is drawn to any of his acts or his states, I did this, I performed that, this is my state, this is my condition, I did this good deed today, I did that. When he goes towards that, he does not see truth. He doesn't see truth therein. He discerns some sort of spiritual calamity in his actions. He sees some type of riyah. That really wasn't done for Allah. There is some riyah in it, show. There is some ujb in it, vanity. And this results in a disturbance in his concentration on Allah. After repeated scrutiny of his actions, the Salik finally refrains from looking at his own deeds and states. Doesn't look at his deeds anymore. Doesn't look at his states anymore. It disturbs him. He doesn't find truth in it. He finds some kind of riyah, some show, some hypocrisy. It was lacking. So Allah takes his vision away from his deeds and his states. He then concludes, the Salik concludes, that his deeds are futile. Hence, being concerned with my deeds with them will only increase his problem and agitation. In this way, Allah Ta'ala prevented them from the perception of their own deeds and their states. On the other hand, now the Wasilin, those who have arrived at that station, are completely absorbed in divine perception, the mushahada of Allah, that is, seeing Allah with the eyes of the heart. This absorption, so absorbed with Allah, this absorption makes them oblivious of their own deeds and stages. They can't even see that because they are too absorbed with Allah. They attribute their deeds now, whatever deeds come from them, they attribute their deeds and their states to Allah Ta'ala. They do not regard their deeds as their own volitional commission, that me, I did that, I did so, I did that. In fact, they have abandoned their own will and intention. So whatever ahwal and deeds, they are from the mercy of Allah. The Shaykh alayhi rahmah, wa nawwarallahu marqadahu, he says, some people live a very long life, although its benefits or the divine aid are less. They live in a long life, but the divine aid of Allah, less. On the other hand, the life of some people is short, but their benefits or the divine aid are considerable. Explanation. Some people live for a considerable time, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years. The apparent demand of this long life, what is the demand? Greater benefit for others. More people should have benefited from you. You had a long life. Also, such a person should have a greater accumulation of capital for the akhirat, the hereafter. but the opposite is observed. They derive little benefit from their longevity, and they receive little divine aid their entire life. You live long, so what? The entire life is squandered in ghaflat, unmindfulness, and in the preoccupation with the fulfillment of nafsani desires. 80 years of what? 90 years of what? Of following the nafs, carnal desires, ghaflat, unmindfulness. They are either completely deprived of the great capital necessary for salvation in the akhirah, they have no capital, or they acquire very little capital for the akhirah. On the contrary, some people live a very short life, but their benefit and the divine aid from Allah are considerable. They spend their short life in ibadat, dhikr, and amali salihah, good deeds. In this is also the significance of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and its rank above the other ummats, in that the lifespan of the members of this ummah is short, 73 years. Average lifespan of this ummah is about 70 years. The nations before, wow. Nuh alayhi salam lived for 1,050 years. He gave dawah for 900. For what? 900? 950. 950. And then he lived for 950 was dawah. Got revelation at 40. And then he lived at what? For another 60 years after, which gives you 1,050 years. And the ummahs before long lives. But this ummah, short life, wow. The lifespan of the members of this ummah is short, while their virtues are more, whereas the opposite is true of the other ummahs. But you know what? ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. That is the grace of Allah, which He gives to whomsoever He wishes. The greater part of the life of some people pass by in negligence, and towards the end of their life, but look how Allah's mercy comes in. Sometimes for some people, the greater part of their life pass by in negligence, and towards the end of their life, the fadl of Allah, the grace of Allah turns towards them, and within a short while, a short time, the loss of the past life is compensated. In fact, the gain is so great that others are unable to acquire it, in spite of spending a lifetime in abundance of worship. This is so because the pivot of excellence is ikhlas. This is the pivot of excellence, ikhlas. Ikhlas is what magnifies a person's deeds. Not abundance of amal, not plenty deeds. It's not how many hajj a person perform or how many rakats of salat. It's not abundance of deeds. It is the ikhlas and the sincerity which makes a deed excellent. Precisely for this reason, one rakat of salat of the arif, of that one who has reached that station of Allah, a wali of Allah, a friend, one rakat of his is superior to 100,000 rakats of others. The Shaykh Ali Rahmah says, when the blessings of Allah are bestowed to a person, he acquires tremendous grace and spiritual favors from Allah. Words are incapable of expressing the wonder and the greatness of such blessings. In fact, these barakat are unimaginable. To understand this, the meaning of barakah, blessings in one's life, is a divine bestowal of what? Of such alertness and diligence that the salik begins to value every moment of life. That is what you call barakah, blessings in one's life. It's a divine bestowal. of such alertness and diligence that the salik begins to value every moment of life. He treasures every breath he treasures, every breath he treasures, never permitting his breath to go to waste. He expends his full effort in physical and spiritual acts of ibadat. Such a person acquires in a short time such wonderful bounties from Allah Ta'ala which are beyond description, and on account of their purity and subtlety, they cannot even be detected. For example, Laylatul Qadr. Although a single night, ibadat therein is better than 1,000 months. The fadl, the kindness and the grace of Allah Ta'ala is not based on anyone's logic, nor is it confined to any person or any specific time. Allah gives it to whomsoever He wants. The Shaykh Ali Rahmah says, this is a line which includes all the states from the beginning to the end of suluk. Some names of awliya have been recorded here. After hamd, praises, and salat, salutation, know that the inception of the salik, when the salik begins his journey, the inception of the salik is the mirror of his goal, his journey's end. His inception is the mirror of his goal and the abode of tajalli, illumination. The one who is guided by Allah Ta'ala reaches this destination. Explaining this, the initial spiritual state of the salik is for him like a mirror, a source of illumination of his final state. This means that the state of spiritual elevation which the salik will reach at the end of his journey, sojourn, will correspond to his initial spiritual condition. It will be corresponding to that. The final state could be gauged from the initial condition. If in the beginning the salik expends all his endeavors in ibadat, in dhikr, riyadat, spiritual exercises, it indicates that a wonderful portal of Allah's faiz and spiritual blessings will be opened up for him. Furthermore, this salik will quickly reach his goal. But if his initial state is weak, remember his inception is like a mirror of his goal, destination. If his initial state is weak, that is, his ibadat is weak, it is offered defectively, it indicates that his final condition will be weak and defective also. When the initial state of the salik starts off with consciousness of Allah, that's how it starts off. The salik seeking aid from Allah Ta'ala. In all his affairs, he seeks Allah's help. Both worldly and dini, he seeks Allah's help. Then you know what? His end will be the meeting point with Allah Ta'ala. He will be completely detached from all creation and the means and agencies, asbab. On the contrary, if in the beginning there is deficiency in his attribute of total dependence on Allah, his reliance and his tawakkul being on material agencies and his tawakkul and trust on his own intelligence, its effect will be on the end condition of the salik. His tawakkul on Allah will be defective even in the end. Involvement, says the Shaykh Ali Rahmah, involvement in only such righteous deeds which you love and towards which you have hastened is worthwhile. And those false desires which you have abandoned for the sake of your true Mawla, Allah, it should be shunned. This means when the salik abandons worldly occupations and engrosses himself in the dhikr of Allah, then sometimes Yes, he's involved in zikr, struggling, but sometimes the nafs, motivated by ignorance and worldly love, the nafs yearns for the occupations which were abandoned. But he left them off, But the nafs sometimes yearns to go back and to indulge in it. Thus it is said that it is worthwhile to involve oneself in only such deeds of virtue which were loved and quickly adopted for Allah's sake. However, the nafsani desires which were abandoned earlier for the sake of Allah should never again be adopted. It is imperative, it is fard to steer away from them. The Shaykh Ali Rahmah says, undoubtedly, whoever has firm faith and yaqeen that Allah Ta'ala demands ubudiyat, Allah demands servitude, He demands worship, he has yaqeen in that, and he will turn his attention towards Allah Ta'ala with genuine effort and desire. Whoever has realized that in all affairs, whoever has realized he is conscious, he knows that all affairs are in the control of Allah. Everything is in the control of Allah. Then such a person will repose his trust on Allah and assign all his concerns and worries to Him. And this is so helpful here. When man fully understands and believes, he has yaqeen that Allah Ta'ala expects him to worship Him and to discharge the rights of ibadat, he will expend all his endeavors in a genuine quest for reaching Allah Ta'ala. He will abandon his nafs, his nafsani desires, his low desires. The deficiency in man's quest for Allah corresponds to the degree of deficiency in his yaqeen. The greater the deficiency in his yaqeen, the more defective will be the quest of the salik. The deficiency is the result of lack of truth in the quest. When the motivation is only Allah's pleasure, it indicates that there is truth in the salik's quest. The aim of ibadat. What is the aim of ibadat? Should be only divine pleasure. So when man is convinced that everything which happens in this world, in the heavens and the earth, is in the control, is in the power of Allah Ta'ala, when he is convinced of this, he has yaqeen in this, not information, yaqeen, then his trust will be fully in Allah. In view of this attitude, he will relieve himself of all worries by assigning these to Allah's will. This here is the formula for stress. Everybody, most people in this world, even me sometimes, we are afflicted by stress, worry, concern, stress, worry, concern. But when man is convinced, one is knowledge, true knowledge, conviction, yaqeen, one is information. No, when man is convinced that everything which happens is in the control and the power of Allah Ta'ala, in other words, when he understands, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, then his trust will be fully in Allah. In view of, this will be his attitude now. In view of this attitude, he will relieve himself of all worries by assigning these to Allah's will. The result of this attitude is a good result. Such attitude brings a good result. What's the result? The abandonment of all worries. Abandonment of all worries. Worries. What is worries? Worries, in fact, are the consequence of placing reliance on one's intelligence and efforts. When one puts his reliance, his trust, he's putting his tawakkul and trust on his own aql, power, devising methods, plans. He's putting his trust on his efforts, then worries come. The salik should be true in his quest and rely on Allah Ta'ala for the attainment of his goal. He should not have trust on his efforts. He must not put trust and tawakkul on his own efforts and schemes. Neither should he bring on himself worries. Everything should be done calmly. When a person's reliance is on his own plans and his own intelligence, then you know what? Then Allah assigns him to the machinations of his nafs. You go ahead. You continue. He assigns him to the machinations of his nafs. Thus, tafweel, to assign everything to Allah and tawakkul are indispensable. They are indispensable. The Shaykh Ali Rahmah says, most certainly, the pillars of life will perish and man's delight will be snatched away. Anybody has doubt in that? No. All the pillars of life will perish and man's delight will one day be snatched away. Therefore, the intelligent man, the aqil, is he who gives priority to the everlasting abode. He gives priority to that over the perishable abode. He is more pleased with the everlasting abode. Explanation. Fearing the loss of worldly pleasures, many people do not involve themselves with suluk. Why people are not interested in suluk? Why people don't come into the path of tazkiyah and purity, self-purification? Why they don't come on the path of suluk and journeying towards Allah is because they fear they have to give up some worldly pleasures. So fearing the loss of worldly pleasures, many people do not involve themselves with suluk. So weak saliks are sometimes accosted by this fear. Allaying their fears, to put these fears aside, the Shaykh Rahmatullah alayhi says that at some time or the other, the world has to be either given up. At some time, you have to give up this world. Or you know what? The world itself will abandon man. Either you give it up sometime, or a time will come when the world will abandon you by death. At that time, all the delightful things of man will be snatched away. So the man of intelligence will therefore choose the everlasting abode of the Akhirah. He will be more pleased with the Akhirah. This does not necessarily mean that he does not derive any pleasure at all from worldly things. No, it doesn't mean that. Yes, he gets some pleasure from worldly things. It's not that no pleasure at all. Such a condition is beyond human nature. Once we are human beings, we derive pleasure and comfort from things here. It only means, what it means is that in relation to this world, although he derives some pleasure here, his pleasure and his yearning for the Akhirah are greater. The Shaykh Ali Rahmah says, the nur of disillusionment, this world is a world of illusion and deceit and deception. But when you are not deceived by it, in other words, you are disillusioned, that brings about a light when you are not trapped and pulled. So this nur of disillusionment with this transitory abode kindled, this nur kindled in his batin, in his spiritual heart, and its glitter illumined his zahir and physical being. So he thus closed his eyes and turned away from this earthly abode. He neither made this world his homeland, nor a residence. He lived on earth, advancing towards Allah Ta'ala. For his advance, he sought Allah's aid and he pressed on towards him. This year is the meaning of the Prophet's statement, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kun fid dunya, when he told Abdul ibn Umar, be in this world. How should you live in this world? Kun fid dunya, be in this world. Ka'annaka gharib, as though you were an alien, a foreigner, a stranger, or abiru sabil, or a wayfarer. Initially, when the intelligent salik musters up courage to abandon the world, in the beginning, gets his courage. Abandon the world doesn't mean go in the mountain, It doesn't mean hide, It means abandon the love of this world, its delights and pleasures. So initially, when he pulls his courage to do that, he experiences some strain and difficulty. Yeah. However, after a few days, a nur, a light, kindles in his heart on account of his disillusionment with this world. It kindles inside because of his zuhd, his abstinence from the glitter and the glamour and the love. This nur which is kindled inside because of his disillusionment, the glitter of this nur becomes manifest on his face and on his body. This is the sign of the acceptance of his endeavors. Therefore, this intelligent salik closes his eyes on this ephemeral and temporary existence of this world. He closes his eyes on it. Thus, he does not regard this world as his abode or his home. He does not regard this world as his abode or home. Remember the song? This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. The treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. This is the exact meaning of the Prophet's statement, kun fid dunya, be in this world, ka'annaka gharib, as though you are an alien. This is not my home. This is not my home. Or abiru sabil, or be in this world like a traveler. So thus, he does not regard this world as his abode or home. His heart does not derive peace on earth. His heart does not derive peace on earth. If you're a stranger or a traveler, you could be in the most beautiful part of the world. You always have a longing to go back home. There's always some type of homesickness in you. This is not our home. There should be a longing for our real home, which is the Akhirah. That was the home of our father. It was the home of our mother, the home of Adam and Hawa. Ala nabina wa alayhim as-salatu was-salam. That's the home of our father, Jannah. And we came from him. We are his children. So how come this is my home? This is not my home. I'm just passing through. I am a gharib. I'm an alien. And everybody who is away from home has that attachment and longing for home. He does not regard this world as his abode or his home. People who regard this world here, then they are really deceived. His heart does not derive peace on earth. Instead, he concentrates on his advancement towards Allah's proximity. In this endeavor, he seeks Allah's aid. Always remember, we must seek Allah's aid. Sometimes you go to do a work. You're going to do a work, you want to help. Would you help me? Somebody help me? Somebody help me, please? What about this quest, this journey, this talab, this search? We must ask Allah's help on every step and on every stage. He does not rely on his own efforts for achieving the goal. We should never rely on our intelligence and our efforts. No one can achieve salvation. No one. On the strength of his efforts. Nobody. And deeds, nobody. Every gain that we gain is because of Allah's rahmah and Allah's fadl. The salik, whose gaze is not on his mujahada, his gaze is not upon his mujahada and struggle, riyadat, exercises, zikr and shughl, but is focused on Allah's mercy, rahmat and his lutf and kindness, will reach his destination. This is the initial state of the salik. The mount of his resolution, this is beautiful figurative language. There's something in a person called determination. In Arabic we call that azmun. So this determination inside of us is like a mount, is like a steed, it's like a horse, it's like a camel. So the mount or the steed or the camel or the horse of his azm, that doesn't rest. It does not rest or halt at any place. It is perpetually on the move until it reaches the divine court. It doesn't halt and say, well, let me take a rest. There's no rest. That is the place of many spiritual revelations. Hear what? A variety of spiritual states draws the salik. You know what happens on this path? Many things happens on this path. Among those states that occurs on this path are lazat, pleasures, farah, happiness, surur, delight and joy, anwar, spiritual rays of illumination, even karamat, sometimes miracles happen, supernatural acts happen, mukashafat, sometimes things are revealed to you, mukashafa, kashf, haqaiq, realities of things become exposed, Uloom wahbiya, divinely bestowed knowledge, and asrar, divine mysteries. These are all different things that occur on the path, and sometimes we become drawn to these things. If the salik is attracted to any one of these states, he becomes stagnant because he stops right there. His progress comes to a halt. For example, if in this journey, Allah has blessed him now, Allah has placed him with cure in his hands. That he can place his hands on somebody's head, recite Surah Fatiha, and the person is healed, he is cured. He makes a dua, the person, mashallah, is cured. He does ruqya. But if he is drawn to that and he becomes so drawn to it, he'll become stagnant and he'll be stuck only on that stage. With some sort of karamat, some sort of kashf, some sort of manifestation happens and he's stuck on that, he becomes stagnant. However, if Allah's fadl and Allah's grace is turned to him, again, we cannot move forward without Allah's grace and fadl. But if Allah's fadl is turned to him and his success is muqaddar, his success is decreed, then the salik will leave all these states. Yes, he will pass through them. He will journey through them. But he will leave all these states and he will continue his journey of progress towards Allah Ta'ala. It's like a man going for Makkah, he going for Hajj. But when he stop in London and the hotel is a 5-star hotel or what, he gets so hooked up there and with the beauties of London, he stay right there. He didn't go forward. But the true salik will not rest at any station in his spiritual journey. He wouldn't rest. He presses onwards. His determination is like a horse, like a mount. He presses onwards and onwards and onwards until he reaches Allah's lofty court. He wants to get into the court of Allah, that royal court. And the station of love, he wants to get to that maqam and station of love where the heart attains true love and pleasure. This station that he wants to get at, and he's carrying his horse towards that, this station is called Maqam Mufataha. In this station, divine blessings and benefit commence their descent on his heart. This is also the station of muwajaha. That is the state of Allah Ta'ala focusing His attention of rahmat to the salik. It is also called, so many names for this station. It is also called maqam mujalasa. That is the banda, the servant, enjoys divine presence. It is also called maqam mushahada. Maqam mushahada. That is Allah Ta'ala showers mysteries, secrets and subtle divine knowledge on His heart. Maqam mushahada is the station where the banda perceives Allah Ta'ala with his spiritual eyes while he's oblivious of his physical senses. Maqam muta'ala is the station attained when maqam mushahada has become entrenched. In this state, the banda, the servant, is completely absorbed in divine recognition, perceiving the beauty, the jamal, the splendor of Allah Ta'ala. Every moment he is intoxicated. This is the state known as wusul. This is the state known as wusul, which is arrival, the goal where the banda has reached Allah Ta'ala. Then that holy court of Allah becomes the nest. That court becomes the nest for the birds of their hearts. This nest is fixed as their home, and therein do they find rest. After attaining Allah's proximity and closeness, the holy court of Allah Ta'ala becomes the home of His servants, just as the nests are for birds. This, the servants of Allah, adopts as their residence, wherein they find peace and rest. Just as the birds find rest in their nests after the day's activity, so too is the condition of the salikeen. Ostensibly, outwardly, he associates with people, moves around with people, but his peace and tranquility are in the station of mushahada. This lofty stage is called maqam Fanaa. This is what is known as Fanaa, maqam Fanaa. The various spiritual stations of maximum elevation are all conglomerated in the stage of Fanaa. This station is also called maqam Uruj and maqam Jama. It is the ultimate goal of the salik. This is the ultimate goal of the salik, to get into that divine court of Allah. It is the end of the journey. It is the end of the suluk. I have one page, I want to finish it inshallah. When the salik descends to the domain of hukuk and rights, and he descends to emotional desires, he does so now with consent and firmness. Neither is he disrespectful to the hukuk and the rights, nor does he have the motive of deriving benefit from nafs and nafsani desires. On the contrary, he enters these domains only for the sake of Allah, with Allah's aid and seeking His succor. Thus it is said in the Quran. Allah says, Qul Rabbi adkhilni mudqala sidq wa akhrijni mukhraja sidq. It's so powerful. Say, O my Rabb, cause me to enter an entry of sidq and truth, and make my exit, cause me to exit, make my exit an exit of truth. By implication, the Salik is saying in this dua, when you, O my Rabb, when you allow me into your presence, let my gaze be only on your power. When you bring me out, let my exit, let my obedience and submission be to you. Appoint for me, O Allah, a strong helper who will assist me against my nafs, and with me help others. Do not aid my nafs against me. Aid me in the perception of my nafs and annihilate my physical being. And to clarify this, as we come to the close of this, when the salik is firmly entrenched in the state of Fanaa. That is, all things, Fanaa, that's that maqam, that station. All things besides Allah are completely erased from his heart. They are completely erased from his heart. He becomes completely absorbed in the perception, in the mushahada of divine beauty and splendor of Allah. His attention is diverted from all things. So after having attained this elevated station of Fanaa, if Allah Ta'ala wishes to appoint the salik, if he wants to make him a sahibi irshad, he wants to make him now a guide for others, you know what Allah then does? He bestows to him the pedestal, the maqam of baqa and farq. In other words, during the state of Fanaa, the full attention of the salik is riveted on Dhati Haq, the divine being of truth. Everything else is obliterated from his vision. To him, every creation is non-existent. When this state of Fanaa becomes entrenched, the salik is granted fikr, concern of creation. That is, Allah turns the salik's attention towards others who will derive benefit from his association. However, there is a big difference between this fikr for people, this concern for people, and the earlier concern prior to his embarkation on the journey of suluk, a big difference. While the former concern, iltifat, was in the state of being oblivious of Allah Ta'ala, other motives being the cause of the concern, the present concern now he has after reaching Fanaa is in reality directed to Allah Ta'ala. In this stage, the gaze towards creation is like looking in a mirror at the reflection of the divine being. The gaze towards creation, when he sees mankind, he sees creation, is like looking in a mirror at the reflection of the divine being. Since the entire creation is the manifestation of his beauty and splendor, mazhar-e lutfihi. At this juncture, these salikin become the media. They are the media for spiritual benefit and guidance for others. They associate with people now. This station is described by the Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi as the heaven of hukuk and the ground of desires. In this portrayal, the idea of the difficulty of the task of these salikin is presented. They know it's a hard task. The rights which devolve upon them as a result of the association with people are comparable to the heaven. Just as it is difficult and almost impossible to ascend into the heaven, so too is the fulfillment of these hukuk. They are difficult. We can't ascend into heaven. We have to die first and other things have to happen. So too is the fulfillment of these hukuk. They are really difficult. It is not within the reach of everyone to do justice to the rights arising from association with people. The ground of desires means their nafsani desires, which were completely erased from their gaze during the state of Fanaa. When they were in the state of Fanaa, there was nothing, no nafsani desires, no emotions. They are totally absorbed. But now Allah is using them. They are coming back down. When these illustrious persons descend from their lofty station of Fanaa to these rights of people, and they ascend back now to desires once more, it is only by the command of Allah Ta'ala. If they had a choice in the matter, they would never prefer to emerge from the state of Fanaa to descend to creation. But they don't have a choice. This descent occurs after the state of Fanaa has become entrenched. Also, this state of Fanaa is achieved. Wow, give me some time to finish. This state of Fanaa is achieved after entrenchment in yaqeen and marifat. Hence their descent. Now is a descent. Coming back, you have to come back down to earth. Hence their descent towards the rights of people is not accompanied, that's not accompanied by negligence anymore and disrespect. No. The earlier state, prior to that Fanaa, that station, was of unmindfulness of the rights of others. That no longer exists. Ghaflat, negligence, is completely abandoned. They are perpetually alert. If someone persecutes them, subhanallah, if someone persecutes them, they do not even seek vengeance because their heart is attached to Allah Ta'ala at all times. They recognize that here what? This person who is doing zulm to me, they recognize that it is Allah Ta'ala who has imposed on them the persecutor. And there is some hikmat, some reason behind that. So if someone praises them, that praise doesn't do anything to them. They do not forget their nafs. Somebody praise them, they don't forget their nafs. They're not fooled by that praise. In short, in the fulfillment of their duties and discharge of the rights, there is no carelessness. They execute their obligations with maximum diligence and concern. They are never unmindful of Allah Ta'ala, not even for a moment. Their descent into the realm of emotion, because now they come back down to emotions. But their descent into the realm of emotion is not for the acquisition of carnal desire and pleasure. It is not for personal benefit. Prior to the state of Fanaa, eating, food, garments, and sex were for self-gratification. It was all for self-gratification and pleasure. Now, they come back down to that. They come back to food, garments, even sex. Now, after the attainment of the lofty state of Fanaa, their indulgence in these mundane acts is with the aid and the consent of Allah Ta'ala and solely for His sake. There's even a class in that. Even a class in having relationship with one's wife. A class in sincerity even in eating. The nafs has absolutely no share in these seemingly worldly activities. When the salik enters this stage, he gains greater perfection. This is the second journey of the salik. The first journey is called taraqi, uruj, elevation. But then he comes back down to earth. The second journey is termed nuzul, descent. The Shaykh Rahmatullah Alayhi substantiates both these journeys on the basis of the Quranic ayat, Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidq wa akhrijni mukhraja sidq. My Rabb, enter me an entry of truth and make me emerge and exit, come down back, an exit of truth. The entry of truth, mudkhala sidq, is a reference to the journey of elevation, uruj. Enter me into that part. Because this journey leads the salik into the divine court. In this state of Fanaa, he becomes completely disassociated from creation. But now he has to exit. وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ الصِّدْقِ. The meaning of exit of truth is the journey of descent, coming back down. This journey takes the salik towards creation once more, and he passes on his spiritual treasure now. He passes this on to people. People benefit from him now. In his upward journey, his uruj, the salik perceived only the might and power of Allah. He does not attribute any action to himself. In the state of descent and nuzul, the salik is in absolute submission to his khaliq. He is pleased with whatever station to which Allah dispatches him. His nafs, therefore, displays no desire for remaining in the station of elevation because he has wholeheartedly submitted himself to the duty imposed on him by Allah Ta'ala. At the end of this subject, the Shaykh offers a dua for steadfastness, istiqamat. The salik supplicates for divine aid from Allah. This is the state of the kamil, the one who has attained perfection every moment of his life. Allah's aid descends on him constantly. This is enough for us to practice on.
Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live, oh I don't care. This is who I am, this is me.